All right, good evening. How many of you here gathered tonight know somebody else in the room? Can I see your hands? You know somebody else in the room? Okay. If you did not raise your hand, introduce yourself to somebody else in the room right now. Now, I want everybody in this room to turn to the person next to you and say, I'm glad you're here because you need this. Would you do? Amen. Good evening. My name is Stephen Grant. I'm the senior pastor of Destiny Christian Center. Thank you for being here. Let me give you a few housekeeping details because we do have cameras running. So if you have somebody in the audience start crying or a child that starts crying, please take them to the cry room because the information may be traumatic at times. So if the weeping and gnashing of teeth begins, please make sure they get to the cry room. That's number one. It doesn't matter the age of the child. If we have snowflakes in the audience, we need to deal with that. Would you not agree? Issue number two, the restrooms are all the way down the hall and make a left. So if you need to use the facilities, walk fast. Number three, if you need water or coffee, they're available over here. And we have a number of things going on tonight that I'm sure you'll hear about as we go. Number one, we are so thankful to have Trevor Loudon and Jim Simpson here in northern Colorado. We truly are, and we will probably have some more coming in as we go, but we just want everybody to be set at ease. You are welcome. You're among friends tonight. Now, with that, we do have a lot of political things and a lot of groups going on tonight, so I will open in prayer, and then I'm going to give the microphone over to a couple of others, and I will also recognize some of the others that are here tonight so that you might become aware of them as well. But let's open in prayer, shall we? Almighty God, we thank you tonight that you are the foundation of the United States of America. And because you are, our hope is not even in a political process first, it is in you first. But then, Lord, as we get off of our knees, you call us to action. And tonight, Lord, we are seeking you for direction to know how to best be engaged in your plans for this nation. So guide us and direct us. We pray, O Lord, for your wisdom and your blessing over both Trevor and Jim as they speak. Lord, let us be attentive. And Lord, we thank you that we will receive from them tonight, and Lord, that which we receive will translate into action on our part. This we pray in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. A couple of items that I want to make you aware of. Number one, we will be recording tonight. We have video cameras going, so please do not wander around and be respectful. This microphone will go on the center stand so that when it comes to the question and answer time, you will be able to come and we will be able to get your questions on microphone as well as the response. And that way we will have a full CD or DVD. Secondly, you can order your CDs, DVDs, and flash drives right out here at the table. And so those will be available immediately following the schedule tonight. Thirdly, let me introduce a couple of people that just want to let you know, I'm just warning you that they are here. So just how many know that there are several people here that are probably on the Southern Poverty Law Center's lists tonight? Just letting you know. So, but I'm going to acknowledge a few more that are friends and heroes. First, I want to say a great shout out and thanks to Don and Peg Cage for their work in this and labor of love. And we have some wonderful, wonderful patriots in the group. Karen Cataline is here. Perhaps you've heard her on 600 KCOL or KNUS as a talk show host. So Karen is here tonight. Wave your hand, Karen. We like to tease each other since she's Jewish. She says she's the Judeo and Judeo-Christian, and I'm the Christian and Judeo-Christian. So we have a great time together. Right back this way. Secondly, right down here in the front with their guard dog, is Leo and Barb Hernandez. Leo and Barb have a group in Lamar, Colorado known as Heritage Defenders. They are standing for southeastern Colorado. They drove all the way from Lamar to be here tonight and join us, and so welcome to them tonight. So that's good to have them here. We have Arlene. Arlene is actually coordinating Americans for Prosperity here in the Colorado area. So she is here. Wave your hand, Arlene. So she's here as well. So those are some of the folks that are gathered around. And so if you want to put a face to a name, let's see, who else am I missing? Saul, where are you? Oh. Sorry about that, Saul. I looked right over the top of your head. I apologize. All right, what are you up to these days? What are you doing?
I'm with co-founder of an organization called Perspectives 101, honest talk on honest issues, and we reaching out to the community, having great conversations. And I'm also a campaign manager for Ben Oste, who's running for county commissioner in Larimer County, District 3. Okay. So just a couple of little things.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So welcome, Saul. It's good to have him as well. Amen. Now, with this and in the coordination of this, there are some people that have actually done some wonderful work, and so I'm going to give the microphone over to them. First, we're going to hear from Steve Hall. Steve has a new group you might be hearing about because it's generating some buzz. It's called the 7,000. I'll let him speak to that, and then we will have Corey come and speak to her group, which is Colorado Freedom Force. She's an absolute hero and ally, and then we'll have Peg Cage come. So, Steve, would you come tonight?
Well, hello and welcome. Gracious, there it is. Huh? I'm Steve Hall, and I'm the founder of a group called Calling the 7,000. The title is rooted in 1 Kings 19:18, and it's where God's talking to Elijah after Elijah's had the best day of his life, killing 450 prophets of Baal, taking care of stuff before the king of Ahab and Jezebel, and he's in a cave pouting and whining. And God calls him out, asks him what he's doing, and he tells him how he's the only one, and he doesn't know what he can do. Well, God sends him on his way, assigns him a job, never does talk to him, assigns him a job, and he says, oh, by the way, I have another 7,000 over here in reserve that I haven't told you about. So the 7,000 are the ones that are hearing these things that are going every day, seeing these things on the news, reading them in the newspapers, and they've got this little urging in their heart. They've got this little voice on their shoulder saying, you need to do something, you need to do something, you need to do something. We need to do something. And then they internalize it as somebody really ought to do something, right? But these are the ones they don't know. They typically will answer, I don't know if you've been there, but I've been there. It's like either I don't have time, or it's, I'm just one guy. What can I do? Well, that's what the 7,000 is about. It's to connect. We're already multi-state in connections that we're making, and we've been up and running for about a month. And edify, educate, encourage Christian patriots. Now, there's a reason I say that. This nation was founded on Christian premises. Okay? Read any of the Founding Fathers' works. That's where this nation was founded. So it's a call to Christian patriots. It's a network for Christian patriots to edify one another, to strengthen one another, to work and to reclaim their communities, their states, and we'll reclaim the federal government as well. So that's a little bit about the 7,000. If you have any questions, go to www.callingthe7000.com, and or you can tag me on Facebook on either the 7,000's page or with a messenger, and I'll be sure and get back to you. So,
thank you, Steve. How many of you heard of a little movement this last summer that was called Recall Polis? Anybody hear about that? Our next hero is Corey Lewis, who actually spearheaded that. Listen to this. She and the team that she assembled ran the largest signature gathering effort in Colorado state history. And she decided she cannot be silent, so she's here to explain what's going on with Colorado Freedom Force.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. I wanted to start by, and I recognize lots of faces in the room tonight, I want to thank you for what you did to help with the recall effort. We wouldn't have got all those signatures if it wasn't for people like you and you and you. So thank you for that. I did feel urging in my heart almost a year ago now when the Colorado legislature passed a horrific bill to join Colorado in the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. And when that happened, I said, dang, I'm so tired of Colorado being an embarrassment. This is my state, and I'm just not going to just sit back anymore and let this happen. So felt an urging in my heart. I got involved locally, and that led to being involved at the top. And one of the things that was holding the whole effort back is people weren't connected throughout the state. And I just started calling. I started calling Republican leaders or Republican women throughout Colorado. And those Republican women gave me names to other people. And I spent all of my free time and a lot of my work time. I just grew an army. And people thankfully would talk to me. And I said, this sounds crazy. Nobody's ever tried this before, but we're going to try to recall the governor. And so what came out of the Recall Polis effort was amazing people, amazing patriots throughout Colorado who are now all connected. And so we didn't want to let that go to the wayside. Something good had to come from that. And what's come from that is Colorado Freedom Force. And our grassroots army is ready. We are ready to collect signatures, which is what I'm doing here tonight. I have the due date too late petition, which a lot of you I'm sure have already signed. But our purpose is to make change through numbers. We have already been doing a lot of work at the Capitol. There's the amazing work that just getting people there to testify on all these bills. Also just getting the word out as to what's happening at the Capitol right now. We have a Freedom Action Report that goes out once a week. And so if you join the force at coloradofreedomforce.com, you'll get our Freedom Action Report once a week. And we've got amazing things what we're planning this year, so stay tuned. But thanks for having me tonight, and I'm glad you're all here.
Thank you, Corey. Amen. Saul, I want you to grab a minute. Will you come up quickly and share about Perspectives 101? Sure. I know I'm putting you on the spot, but just take a minute and share with everybody, will you, brother?
Okay. Actually, come on, Yvonne. Yvonne and I and another young lady decided to start an organization several months ago, and we initially started it out as a Hispanic outreach organization. And after talking, and we actually decided that we're tired of the diversification here in our country. I am not a Hispanic, okay? I am an American, and we are Americans first. Oh. And by the way, this is Yvonne Paez. She's one of the, we work really close side by side on Perspectives, and I'll have her say a few things about Perspectives.
Thank you. And so it started that way, and it mutated into something where we just wanted to reach out to everybody. What we have is a problem of information. That's why we're here tonight to listen to Trevor Loudon. And there's a lot of other things going on, and we needed something in northern Colorado, and we needed something that was free for people to come. People don't need to pay for information, and people are basically uninformed. And if they're informed, they're misinformed. So we bring them honest talks on current issues, and there's talks on everything. We've had talks on immigration. We've had talks on that sex education bill. We have had talks with panelists from immigrant panelists from socialist countries that tell us what life was like under a socialist regime and why they came to the United States, because that's being sold as something wonderful. And it's not true when we have to be out there and say that. And the next one that we're having is the 29th of February. And if you sign up on my thing, you'll get an invitation. And it's going to be Let's Talk Guns. And it's a about the Second Amendment. It's about questions and answers for people. And it's in the middle. It's for anybody who wants to come to get good information. And there's a lot of people on the fence. So, and then we're going to finish that talk up with the goings-on with our red flag law and some of those problems in Colorado. So I don't want to take any more time, but that's what we're about, and there's a lot more. So thank you.
And real quick, it'll be February 29th, and we'll be doing it at Loveland. And right now, it looks like we'll be doing it at the Message of Life Ministries, and it'll be in the afternoon. But reach out to us, find us on Facebook, Perspectives 101, or find me on Facebook, friend me, and then you can message me at any time. Thanks. Solomon Martinez. Bye.
Amen. Peg Cage and I met, what did we meet, 3 years ago, Peg? 3 years ago? I was down at the Longmont Republican Women Group speaking on immigration. How many know that immigration is in the Bible? Okay, for those of you that didn't know that, immigration's in the Bible. And since then, I wrote a small book on it. It's called Fixing Immigration. Pat Bollinger is fond of saying that book is so easy to read, you can read it while you're sitting in the restroom. So it's not a hard read at all. It doesn't take you long. But she calls it a potty book, so I'm just telling you, right? But I was down sharing on immigration issues down in Longmont, and so Peg and I became friends, and we became acquainted. And Peg has something going on with the state that she wants to talk about with the Colorado State Republican Party. So Peg, would you come as well?
Thank you. Hi. So does anybody here believe in the American dream? You work hard and you can succeed, right? Well, the Colorado election laws and statutes are set up so that we can make a government of the people. And the Colorado Republican Party platform and bylaws are set up so that we can make a government of the people who believe in the American dream. Well, I've noticed in my workings with the Republican women in Boulder County, I was Boulder County chairman for the GOP. Come on, I was Boulder County chairman. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Okay, but we had a lot of fun. And working with the Republicans in Boulder County, as you might imagine, those are some dedicated people. Those are, oh, there's a lot of us. Nine, yeah. Yeah, we're really dedicated. But I've noticed with the caucuses are dying, and that is how we make a government of the people. So I figured Arlene and I were on the executive committee for the Colorado State Republican Party, and we realized that it really needs to be taken control of by people who believe in a government of the people. People, February 14th is the last day to affiliate with the Republican Party and to go to your caucus and to make a difference. And there's so much information that I wrote a book. Only I didn't write a book that I can sell. I wrote it in a website form so you can go and you can search the website for everything about how the caucuses work and how the party's supposed to work and all this sort of stuff. And I want to share that with you because I believe that we can create my Colorado GOP, which will then create a government of the people. Thank you.
And Peg has cards for that, and she will be available to talk with you afterward as well. All right, in a few moments, we're going to change the order of what's going on, and we're going to introduce our speakers. So Regina's here, and she's going to make introduction. Afterward, Regina, if you would, put the microphone right in Steve's hands, and he can get it into this, because we'll be using this mic for questions and answers later on. Before we do, though, you need to shake out a few kinks. We are going to stand and share with the Pledge of Allegiance. So will you stand, please? Gentlemen, remove cover. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Can I introduce Regina?
Yes, you can.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to introduce to you Regina Thompson. This woman has brought us Trevor Loudon and Jim Simpson. And she gave me a call and she said, I'm bringing these guys to town. Do you want to do anything with them? And I called Steve. So here you are. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you, Peg. As I was sitting here listening to all the other introductions and so forth, I thought, maybe I should tell you guys who I am and why I'm here and why I'm bringing speakers like Trevor and Jim into the state. In 2008, I was living in Utah, and my employer transferred me to Denver to the corporate office, which was just, I had been a sales manager working out of my house in the trunk of my car, and bringing me here and putting me in a corporate office was just, was horrible. But for 3 years I did that until one day they laid me off in May of 2011. That was one of the most glorious days of my life, because by the time I got to that point, I knew that I had a higher purpose for being not only in Colorado, but for my existence, and it was not to punch a time clock and sit in a corporate office. So my first foray into Colorado politics was leading the defeat in 2011 of Proposition 103, which at that time was the largest attempted statewide increase. I'd got a random email from the Evergreen Tea Party, and I had never been to anything of theirs, but I was on their list. And one day it said, there's an organizing meeting next Thursday. This guy at the Independence Institute's organizing for something. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't have to go to work next Thursday anymore. And so I went, and he was organizing an issue committee to stop the passage of Proposition 103. So when I walked out of the meeting 2 hours later, I had volunteered to be the executive director of the effort, knowing nothing about Colorado's initiative process. But we defeated that by a 2-to-1 margin. And that launched me on my career in politics. So I've gone on from there to become the state coordinator for the Tea Party Patriots organization, and I enjoy bringing speakers in. In, I think, February, if I'm not mistaken, of 2012, Trevor Loudon was in the state speaking for the first time. I think that Tom Tancredo had facilitated his visit here, and I went to hear him and took my friend Bill with me. And after we heard him speak that night, I nudged Bill and I said, let's ask him if we can take him out to dinner, which we did. We found out that, the way to Trevor's heart is through good American beef. He loves a nice steak, so keep that in mind. So we took him out to dinner, and, we spent a long evening becoming friends, and we bonded, and, eventually Trevor and I became business partners, working on his speaking and touring and on making the movie that he's got. So that's how I came to do this. I'm an organizer by nature, and I love finding people like Trevor and Jim that have got a message that people need to hear, because I can organize events and bring them in. So on October 1st of this last year, I hosted a couple of fierce women from Europe, Katie Hopkins, who some of you may have heard on TV, and a friend, Elizabeth Sabadich-Wolf from Austria. Elizabeth's case caused the European Court of Human Rights to declare that there is no free speech in Europe, that the feelings of someone being hurt, specifically, Muslims in this case, their feelings trump the right of any of you to have free speech. So I noticed on the order forms that Tim is also selling copies of our presentation from October, and if you're interested, that was just a phenomenal evening listening to these two fierce women present their story. So that evening, I told the crowd, I said, most of you guys are out here putting together your fantasy football teams. But I'm putting together my Fantasy Freedom League. And I want to tell you that it's no longer a fantasy, that I have a full-blown Freedom League of truth-telling freedom fighters, and I'm so proud that Trevor and Jim and Katie and Elizabeth and so many others around the country are part of my Freedom League. So Trevor, for those of you who don't know, has been researching, started with researching the communists in his own country who caused New Zealand to be pulled out of a nuclear compact. And he moved on to researching the commies and the socialists in the United States government. And he's done that for 30 years? Yeah, for a very long time. And there's no one that I've run into that knows more about the treachery within our government than Trevor does. I met Jim a few years ago through Trevor because Jim has been friends with Trevor since about 2008 when he started writing about the Cloward-Piven issues and how it's affected our culture. So I am so proud. Jim's been a businessman. He's worked in government. But what he really loves to do is to research and to write. And the research he's done on specifically refugee resettlement, which affects your community tremendously, is really phenomenal what the two of them have done. So you'll find Jim, if you've seen the movie Agenda and Agenda 2, and he's also in Trevor's movie and several others. So there are a lot of places where you will be able to catch Jim on tape. So I am so proud tonight to first of all introduce you to Jim Simpson, who's going to speak to you, and then I'll be followed by Trevor Loudon. Thank you. Jim?
Boo. Does it work? It works. All right. Hold on. Just put some things here. Whoa. How y'all doing? Good. You'll get over it. Before we get started, I have a crass commercial message. This is my book, The Red-Green Axis 2.0. This is the second edition of my Red-Green Axis book, An Existential Threat to America and the World. And it goes deeply, even more deeply in my first book, into the refugee resettlement program, but it also goes a lot into illegal immigration and the entire agenda behind it, who hatched it, how it was hatched, and what it's all about. The red-green axis is the collusion between the Reds, which are the communists, socialists, and various leftist organizations, and the Muslim organizations, most prominently the Muslim Brotherhood, but, well, they're all pretty much on the same page, and how they are trying to subvert and destroy our nation, because that's what they're doing. And I got to keep this up here because, you know, Elizabeth Warren said she's part Cherokee. Well, I'm also 1/500,000th Cherokee myself, and my Indian name is Long Wind. So sometimes I talk a little bit longer than I'm supposed to. So I'm on a strict time diet here tonight. And but before I start, wait a minute. Before I start, I want to do something different. I want to have there's this very good program now, a relaxation program. It's talked about in all the psychology books. And it's guaranteed to make you smile. So I want you all to join with me. Start loosening up here. Loosen up a little bit. Loosen up like this. Take a few deep breaths. Now just imagine you're out in a field, way out in the country, your own secret place. Nobody knows you're there. It's beautiful, perfect Colorado blue sky weather. Spring, the flowers are blooming, the fragrance is heavy in the air. The birds are chirping. And you're lying down on a rock looking over a crystal clear mountain stream, a deep pool, and your hands are in the water. and you're looking around, and it's just so gorgeous. The sight is so peaceful. And the water is so clear that when you look down into it, you can see the bulbous eyes and panicked face of Adam Schiff as you're holding him down under the water. See, it worked. You're all smiling. Everybody's laughing. Okay. Oh, we'll start there. Good place to start, because the rest is kind of depressing. All right. So let's see. So my book is the red-green axis. Let's see, is this thing going to work? Does it work? Is it working? It's not working.
Let's see here.
It's on. Is it? Yeah, I know, but... Oh, there we go. Okay, so there's the red, and we all know who the first guy is, Marx. We all know who the second guy is, Lenin. And I edited out the guy who's in the middle because we don't have enough time tonight, so I'll just tell you. His name is Sergei Nechayev, and he's the most important radical nobody's ever heard of. In 1869, he wrote a book, or not a book, rather, a 3-page pamphlet called the Revolutionary Catechism. And some of you have heard of it. In it, 22 years old, he called for the destruction of the world as we know it. He was an anarchist. His group was called the Nihilists. He was the model for the person in Dostoevsky's novel, The Devils. And he was arrested for murder, and behind bars he helped orchestrate the assassination of Tsar Alexander II. And Vladimir Lenin's older brother tried to follow suit and assassinate Tsar Alexander III, and he got caught, and he was sentenced and executed. And Lenin loved Nechayev. Nechayev's Revolutionary Catechism talks about what he says is all they want, and this is what all the socialists want. They want our happiness, our undying happiness. They want our everything wonderful. But before we can get that happiness, there first has to be an all-destroying revolt, destroying the world as it is. So, to that end, the revolutionaries will do everything possible to increase the miseries and evils of the people until at last their patience is exhausted and they're driven to a general uprising. Doesn't that sound like what's going on today? Yes. Constant provocation, constant turning our culture upside down and inside out. He advocated penetrating all the institutions of society, and he wrote down an order of execution for the various classes of society. And when Lenin's Soviet Revolution took over, they used the Catechism as their plan. And every single communist revolution since has worked on that basis. We've never heard of them, but guys like, for example, Eldridge Cleaver, remember Eldridge Cleaver? Yeah. Wrote Soul on Ice. He considered Nechayev his Bible. So it's like a lot of things. The leftists always knew about these people, but we never heard of them because it was kept secret. The green, of course, is the Muslim groups, because green is a very prominent color in Islamic tradition. And the axis is an asymmetric strategy for military conquest. I've been called a conspiracy theorist. It is not a conspiracy theory. Put yourself in our enemy's position. If you are going to attack us, do you attack us at our strength, our conventional military, where you know you will get instantly wiped out? What do you do if you're the enemy? You look at the vulnerabilities of our society. And what's the vulnerabilities? Well, it's our freedom, it's our open society, It's our genteel nature. It is all of the institutions of our Judeo-Christian society and culture that they see, A, as a target to be destroyed, and B, as the vehicle through which they can destroy us. So there's, today, poster children for the Red Queen Axis. We call them the Squad. And it's a multi-front strategy. Immigration, silencing our voices, discrediting all of us, stealing elections, and they have countless ways. I could talk for an hour about how they steal elections. Indoctrinating children, corrupting culture, that's a huge one. That's what the gay rights agenda is all about. Nothing to do with the issues that they claim to promote. It's all about how those issues can serve their subversive purposes. So I want to start with a little bit on the war on speech and show you where that came from. Because, you know, how many times do we hear that we don't like this or we don't like that, we're racists, we're bigots, we're homophobes, we're xenophobes, we're name your phobe, right? Where did it come from? Well, started with Lenin. He said, we must write in a language that sows hate, revulsion, and scorn towards those who disagree with us. It's tactical, right? It's all about intimidation. It has nothing to do with who we are. Actually, it does. It has a lot to do with who we are. We are upstanding, principled people, and that has to be destroyed. And how do you do it? By discrediting it, by marginalizing it, by creating an atmosphere of hatred for it. So that started with Lenin. And look what they did in the, well, I guess that doesn't work too well. In the 40s, the Soviet Union sent out memos to the communist parties of the world saying constantly degrade our critics. Anybody who gets in the way, call them an anti-Semite, call them a Nazi, call them anything that is associated with a bad smell in the public mind, and if it's repeated enough, it becomes truth. This is the 1940s, right? This is nothing new. Now, Herbert Marcuse, I usually go a great deal into the Frankfurt School. How many people have heard of the Frankfurt School? Quite a few of you. Founded in Frankfurt, Germany, the School for Social Research. Did I lose that? I did. The School for Social Research relocated at Columbia Teachers College in 1933 when the communists, they were mostly Jewish communists, had to flee Hitler. And they were relocated in the Columbia Teachers College, 1933, through the good graces of John Dewey, the father of public education, along with Edward R. Murrow. Remember Edward R. Murrow, CBS News anchor? He ran an organization called the International Institute for Scholars, or for Education. For education. And he was responsible for bringing them over here. And they came to the Teachers College and began spreading their communist poison through something they called critical theory, which, along with Nechayev and Marx, criticize everything existing. Well, anyway, Herbert Marcuse wrote an article called Repressive Tolerance, where he argued that America, because we're racist, we're bigots, we're capitalists, we're imperialists, we're et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, would never listen to the left. So in order to get their voice across, there had to be something called partisan tolerance, tolerance of leftist ideas only, and complete intolerance of ideas from their opponents, right down to opinion, word, and thought. And they, no problem using violence, no problem using deception. Every tool in the book was legitimate, according to Marcuse, to get their ideas across and, more importantly, silence us. And so that's what's been going on ever since, and Saul Alinsky turned it into a program called Rules for Radicals. But it was these guys, it was their ideas who brought it forth. And you can see there Marcuse mentored Angela Davis. Now here's where we bring it up to the present. Herbert Marcuse worked with the Southern Poverty Law Center's co-founder, Julian Bond, for many years. They were good friends. They knew each other well. Herbert Marcuse's partisan tolerance is the hate tactic that the Southern Poverty Law Center applies against us today. It's all communist inspired. It's all communist determined. Okay, shut up. All right. Okay, so that's my first tranche. Anyway, so that's what we get with this hate agenda. And we know where it comes from. And it's natural, because nobody wants to be hated. We don't want to be intimidated. We don't want to be marginalized. We want to be accepted by the group. It's natural. It's a natural human instinct. And they know that. And that's why they do it that way. And so many people are just so afraid that it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. Just by being identified as a hater or a bigot, all of a sudden people don't want to talk to me. You know, it's like, well, by just standing next to you, I may be associated with you, and I may be called a hater and a bigot. What's that going to do for my job? What's that going to do for my standing in the community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? It's a tactic. So we all know that, but that's where it all came from. And so now we have the latest component of that tactic, Islamophobia. That's the latest phobia, Islamophobia. And this guy lays out the words that you can't use, because if you do, you will be an Islamophobe. Now look at some of those words, it's ridiculous. Islamic terrorism, you can't say that, or you're an Islamophobe. Violent jihad, you can't say that, even though there are all these people screaming Allahu Akbar while they behead people and kill people and run people over. You can't call them Islamic jihadists, otherwise you're an Islamophobe. Now Issam Omish is an interesting guy. He runs he is the head of general and laparoscopic surgery at Alexandria Hospital in Alexandria, Virginia. Don't lose your head over it. But he is also co-founder of the Dar al-Hijra Mosque, where Anwar al-Awlaki taught. And Nidal Hassan visited Anwar al-Awlaki there. So did two of the 9/11 hijackers. Can we say Islamic terrorism? Yes. Can we? Issam Omish was there at the founding. He is still a board member. And he's a board member of many other Muslim Brotherhood groups, including this little interesting thing called the Washington Trust Fund. And it looks innocuous enough. It turns out the Washington Trust Fund is the property management organization for the Council on American Islamic Relations physical property holdings in Northern Virginia. So he's a member of CARE as well. So these guys are all totally full of it. Well, where did it come from? It came from the Organization for Islamic Cooperation. Since 1990, have been trying to get blasphemy codes put into international law. And they were successful at that, first in something called UN Resolution 1618, which both Obama and Hillary supported. So we really dodged a bullet when we elected President Trump, because he wasn't going to sign anything like that. And then we got the Migration Compact that makes it explicit you can't speak against Islam. And that's what Elizabeth Sabatish-Rolfe ran into with this. And in fact, actually, there's blasphemy codes in European law that have pre-existed before the Migration Compact. But look at what the European Parliament member says. He says it's going to become a criminal offense, and anybody who talks badly about migrants, no matter how bad the migrants are, and let's face it, they're doing a lot of nasty stuff in Europe and over here, say anything against them, you can be arrested. You can be prosecuted. That's the intimidation factor. That's the stuff we're facing now, folks. So there have been a lot of efforts to silence us, especially since 2016, because the president is so outspoken. And I'm just listing a few of them. Trevor and I have personally witnessed these things. I've had events shut down. We have friends that have had events shut down, either through threats from Antifa, through threats from the Council on American Islamic Relations, left-wing legislators. They all call us Islamophobes and haters. They have debauched the national political dialogue and reduced it to nothing more than infantile elementary school name-calling. That's what it is. This is elementary school, schoolyard bully tactics. Nothing else. And I always begin my speeches identifying that, because people in the rooms that might want to say that are going to look pretty darn stupid if they do, after they've been introduced to that fact about what it is they're really doing. So, let's talk about immigration. It's a crisis strategy. I wrote about two socialist professors from Columbia University who in the 1960s wrote an article called The Weight of the Poor, A Strategy to End Poverty. Now, this article, they argued that the poor should be packed onto the welfare rolls till the welfare rolls were exploding, not because they wanted to help the poor, but to break the system. And following that systematic collapse, the poor would riot in the streets. What they really wanted, and they say this explicitly, they want the poor to be angry, because only when the poor are angry will we be afraid of them. And so that strategy was carried forward to the Association for Community Organizations Reform Now, ACORN, which used it and continues to use it under different names by doing the same thing through the back door, the $15 minimum wage, ever expanding welfare rights, including now to illegal aliens. That's just a continuation of the Cloward-Piven strategy through the back door. But they were involved in a lot of other stuff. For 10 years, they studied our electoral system. And after 10 years, they did some test court lawsuits and found a sympathetic judge. Their argument was that the poor weren't capable of voting on their own, weren't capable of registering to vote. They needed our help. I mean, this is the argument they make all the time, right? It's just an excuse to turn the whole process over to the government. They wrote the National Voter Registration Act of 1993, which President Clinton is signing here in the signing ceremony with the two of them standing right behind him. The National Voter Registration Act, Motor Voter, it's called, automatically, it turns the federal and it turns the state governments and local governments into de facto voter registration drives for low-income people. That's what it does. You go to get your driver's license, you get a voter registration card. And some of the groups that support them, like the American Civil Liberties Union, sue states that don't rigorously enough enforce that law. So they literally have used our taxpayer dollars to turn these organizations into voter registration drives for low-income people. And so here are some of the things they say. I like this one especially. Advocacy must be supplemented by organized demonstration to create a climate of militancy that will overcome attitudes which many people have towards welfare. You know, welfare, taking welfare used to be something that you really were kind of ashamed of. You didn't want to do it. You wanted to run out and get a job as soon as you could. Now it's something you're supposed to be proud of and demand, and militantly demand. As your right. Why? Because you're being oppressed by a racist, sexist, bigoted, et cetera, capitalist society which needs to be destroyed. It's the same old thing over and over again. This is what Herbert Marcuse says about it. This is very interesting. Oh, for crying out loud. Keeps interrupting me. Well, I'm getting there. I am getting there. I think I'm actually doing pretty good with time. Look at this. The only tolerance can only be won in the sustained effort of radical minorities, intolerant, militantly intolerant, and disobedient to the rules of behavior which tolerate destruction and suppression. Of course, that's us. But think about that. That's how they see inner city poor. That's how they see the different racial and ethnic groups, and that's the kind of attitude they want those people to have. And those people learn that in school now. They learn it from their politicians all the time. And at the same time, we see, now it's sort of a confluence of lazy, selfish, corrupt carelessness that leads Democratic-run cities into the sewer, along with a recognition that totally ignoring these people and letting them live like rats is something that really gets them angry. Mm-hmm. And they can turn around and blame it on the capitalist, the white man. And you don't even have to be white to be white. All you have to do is believe in our society. One of the first people who came up here and said, I'm not a hyphenated American, I'm an American. Yes, sir, that's right. That's right. But they want to hyphenate everything because it's a divide and conquer strategy. That's all it is, divide and conquer. And so here's another example of where all that leads. I just want you to look at this. This is from the Government Accountability Office. 2015, it was put out last summer of 2018, which is the latest report they put out. 2015, as of 2015, in these 5 states, there were over 9,000 illegal aliens in jail for homicide. That's 9,000 Kate Steinleys. That's 9,000 people, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters, sisters, brothers, who will never see that family member again because these people allow these illegal aliens into this country, and they allow them to stay here. And not only that, they encourage them to stay here. This is Arizona puts out a monthly statistic. Look at this. 18% of all kidnappings are done by criminal aliens. 18%. Child molestation, 17%. Drug trafficking, of course, it's huge. Murder, 12%. Vastly more larger than their representation in the general public. Although there's actually 30 million illegal aliens, not 12 million as the official numbers say. That's also bogus. They bring diseases. How many have heard of Chagas disease? Yeah, it destroys your heart. It's a parasite brought in by the kissing bug, which used to only exist along the southwest border. It is now in 28 states, and 50% of those Chagas bugs contain the disease. And you die from it, sooner or later. Now here's one of my favorite charts. This is in my book. Most of these things are in my book. Look at this. How many languages are spoken in public school today? 400. 400. Now look here at Where's Denver? Denver, 124 languages spoken in public schools, 37% of the student body. How's anybody supposed to learn? It's chaos. It's contrived chaos. It's deliberate chaos. It's planned chaos. This is the diversity is our strength mantra. This is where it got us. And while any of us are afraid to say, no, really diversity isn't our strength, well, you're a racist, this is what we get, because this is a military strategy. It's a military strategy to overthrow our nation by diluting our society to the point where Americans who know what America is just disappear. It's what it's all about. And at the same time, all of those people will vote Democrat. Refugees, for example, use welfare for life at higher rates than other groups, even other immigrant groups. And, you know, a lot of these statistics, it's a bear to try to get them out of the government. But after Trump was elected, they started coughing them up. And this is something that the Health and Human Services Department put out, showing how much money refugees and asylees get for these different programs. That's over 10 years, $125.7 billion, $12.6 billion a year, okay? Now, I figured that out for if you use all the refugees that ever came into the United States, that's about $3,000 a person, okay? Well, that's money, but it doesn't sound like that much. But guess what? That's what they didn't include. Look at all that. Look at all that. How much is that? Well, I figured out the supplemental security income is $2,000 per head, food stamps $1,000, federal housing $500. So you're already up to $6,500 a head. And I don't even know how to go through all those other ones. How much is it when you add it all up? 20, 30, 40, who knows? Demographics is destiny. Now, Teddy Kennedy knew this in 1965 when he passed the 1965 Immigration and Nationalities Act, which, if you bought Trevor's book, you would discover was modeled by the California Communist Party. Those are the kind of little nuggets of information you get on every single page of his books. It's amazing stuff, amazing work. Demographics is destiny. This is their mantra. I'm not saying this is what the left says. Now, they were talking about this in the 60s, but we have it on paper. And there's 2008. There's a secret memo where some very prominent Democratic leaders got people like George Soros and other big money people in the room to talk about how demographics is changing and how it may provide them with the permanent, quote, progressive future that they seek for our nation. And Alicio Medina, who's probably the most outspoken illegal alien advocate, member of the Democratic Socialists of America, big labor leader, said in a public speech, Amnesty puts 12 million on the path of citizenship. I think it's 30, not 12, remember that. Can you imagine if we have even 2 out of 3? They win, and it's all over. And so, since the 1980s, and this is a problem with the legal system as well as the illegal system, because we get over 1 million legal permanent residents annually, 1 million. And that by itself, if nothing else was done, and the thing, they talk about how much they're all needed to fill American jobs, right? First of all, that's a lie. But the second part of it is only 15%, less than 15%. It was like 12% in the most recent year the data is available. 12% come for employment reasons. Almost all the rest are family reunification, which is a fancy way of saying chain migration. And then you have all these other programs. You get visa overstays, you get visa waivers, you get temporary protected status. It goes on and on and on and on. And there's all stuff that's gradually been brought past into the system over time, and we're just being overwhelmed. And here's just a few snapshots of the consequences of this. You know, if Texas goes blue, we will never have a Republican president again. And look at the Texas demographics today. 40% white, 41% Hispanic. It's already a minority-majority state. And the only reason it's not blue today is because most of those minorities don't vote. So guess what they're doing? They're out there registering them to beat the band. And they don't care if they're illegal or legal. Oh, for crying out loud. This thing just won't shut up. Okay. It's a good idea. Well, no, I'm giving myself 10-minute increments. Am I on the last 10-minute? Uh-oh. All right. Well, I better hurry up then. Okay. So it's happening all over the place, and it explains why all these states are turning purple and then blue. And by the way, I'll make this available as a PDF for anybody who wants it after the program. And you can also sign up for my Swamp Report, which is a great program, and we have webinars. We had Trevor on last Sunday. We had the Google whistleblower on. That was very interesting. So that's something you want to sign up for. I'll have a sheet of paper out there for you. I wanted to show you this. A lot of people complain about the ratio of Muslim to Christian refugee resettlement, and you can see that in the Obama years, Muslim refugees really skyrocketed. But after Trump was elected, boom. And yeah. And that's mostly because of the travel ban and because of Trump's extreme vetting. Because prior to this president, refugees were not vetted. They will tell you they were not. They were processed. Yes. They were processed. And there are customs and border protection people who do that process, and that is what they say. So the refugee resettlement program has come down now. The targets are set by the president. So in 2018, they reduced it to 45. 2019, they reduced it to 30,000. 2020, the goal is 18,000. So they've really, really reduced it a whole lot. And we can thank the president for that. But the trouble is the refugee resettlement program is not the refugee resettlement program. That is the refugee resettlement program. Yes. That is the special immigrant visas, Cuban Haitian entrant program, giving free pass to illegal Cuban Haitians, asylum seekers, trafficking victims, and the unaccompanied alien children, which is the problem we had all this year and last year. Flooding the border, usually not unaccompanied, and not children, minors, but not children. The ones, most of the DACA kids, they call them, are now in their 20s and 30s. You know, and the whole thing is a fraud. The whole thing is a fraud, and it's designed for this purpose. Demographics is destiny to overwhelm our nation and deliver it to the extreme left. Oh, now here we get to the interesting part. Oh, small communities. I did a presentation a couple of years ago. You'll be happy to know this presentation was part of an effort that prevented a halal meat packing plant from being established in a small Texas town. Yeah, actually two Texas towns. It used to be a very stable industry. It was high paying. It was unionized, and I do not like unions, but I would say this, I would argue that this is one circumstance where a union may be the appropriate way to go. Of course, it would raise the cost of beef to consumers, but I wouldn't mind at all paying a couple extra dollars a pound for beef or chicken or for whatever to know that I was getting good American people to work in those processing plants, getting good wages, rather than illegal aliens and refugees who are being paid minimum wage, if that. Greeley, as you all know, is right in the backyard. That's sort of a timeline of what happened with it. You probably all know about the rate of illegal aliens, and then now we've got, instead, refugees. So let's look at Greeley. What's happened between 2000 and 2016? Well, the Hispanic population has increased 73%. The black population, mostly Somali, has increased 185%. Asians, I don't know who those are. Maybe you guys do. Burmese, well, there you go. More people going to the packing plants. 2.7 million for English language learners. 35% speak English or not at all. 22.5% below the poverty line. This is what happens when you turn to illegal aliens and refugees to work the meat packing plants. Here's a snapshot of the language, what languages spoke, at least some of them. And look at this. Greeley's crime rate is higher than 77% of all U.S. cities. Okay? Now, but Greeley is not unique. I looked all over the country. Here's another one. Fort Morgan, right up the road. And look at that. Black increased 4,000%. White population has declined. We call that white flight. 21.9% below the poverty line. 24 languages spoken. It's crazy. And there's Fort Morgan's crime rate is higher than 86.4% of other cities in the United States. This is what happens. Amarillo, Texas, same thing. Look at what the former mayor said. He said they were getting $100 a year from the feds to teach English as a second language. It was costing them $1,300 a head. They're stuck with the bill. He said, now this is a Democrat mayor, okay? He said, a group of Somalis came in to say they had elected a mayor. Then another faction claimed they had their own leader. We came to find out that rival tribes, slaves and masters, were being settled together. Somalia is a nation of clans, and clans are nothing more than glorified street gangs. And if you're in this street gang, you're in this clan, you walk across the street, it's like a hood, a Crip going into a Bloods neighborhood. You wind up dead. That's what it's like. And they're taking these people from all these various clans, dumping them together. Same place. Do they care? Do they even know? It's twisted. And I swear to God, you just want to whack some of these people. I love that. Look at this. Huron, South Dakota. 11,000 people. 27% below the poverty line. White flight again. Hispanic. Look at the increase. Look at the increase in Asians, mostly refugees from Burma. And a lot of those people are nasty. They are, I forget the brand of Islam that they belong to, but they come here because nobody else wants them. Nobody else will take them. And our brilliant State Department, in working its statecraft, says, oh, okay, we'll take all the worst people that you have if you'll do just this one little thing for us. That's the State Department's statecraft. How do you like that? Rape rate in Huron, 11,000 people.
I think you meant the Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia.
Pardon?
Wahhabism in Saudi Arabia.
What's in Saudi Arabia?
Asking about this brand of Islam, which is very radical. It's a Wahhabism.
Wahhabi, yeah, but Rohingya. It's the Rohingya. That's Rohingya Muslims, yeah. But yeah, I believe they're Sunni. I believe they're, yeah. Okay, so, hey, you know what? I'm going to get done before I'm done. I should probably do this more often. I'll just have to keep talking until it goes off. So what can we do? Well, the number one thing I really think we do, because the reason we are here is because as a nation we have abandoned God. And just like in the time of the judges, when each man did what was right in his own eyes, this is what we get. You know, a lot of times I don't say we're punished for our sins, we're not punished for our sins, we're punished by our sins. All we do, we just go on doing what we're doing, and we will get the things that happen when we do those types of things. And our nation, we need to have a revival, a religious revival, Christian revival in this nation, because that is what made this country what it is. It's not that we're a bunch of smart white people or anything else. Has nothing to do with race, sex, oh, for crying out loud. Anything else. It has to do with our Judeo-Christian ethic. That's it. That's what gave us our strength, and that's why they targeted us. So we need to do all these things. Trevor's going to talk a lot more about what's going on in terms of voting. We need to engage our churches, and this is a church who's very engaged. It's great to see. Too many of them are timid. We need to register voters. We need to get fully involved for the 2020 election. And one of the things that you can do is you can support my campaign for Congress, because I just announced last week. Yep.
Where are you running?
Pardon me?
Where are you running?
I'm running in Maryland, dark blue Maryland, in a state that is 2-to-1 registered Democrat to Republican. But the current Republican governor beat the Democrat, won in that district with significant margins two times in a row. And I'm going to win. That's all I'm going to say. I'm going to win. So you have to buy my book. You can get it at Amazon for $10 plus shipping. You can get it at the Center for Security Policy for free download that ruins my marketing plan. But if you want to buy a hard copy and get it signed by me, it costs $15. And I charge $15 because I need the money, frankly. And it won't cost too much more to get it signed either. All right. Thank you all very much.
Just go on, do I?
Oh, wait, you know what? No, I'm supposed to introduce you.
Oh, okay.
I get to talk a few more minutes. Yeah, long wind gets to bloviate some more. And I will say, you know, if you haven't already gotten sick of my ugly face, you get an opportunity to see plenty more of me in this DVD, which is probably one of the... I think this is the best documentary about the left in this country that's ever been made. It's fantastic. Fantastic. So I highly recommend you get that. But first buy my book, damn it. Excuse me. So, I met Trevor in 2008 when I was doing a lot of research on the Cloward Piven strategy and other things. And I just sort of stumbled onto him, you know. We researched it, and I found all of his writings at that time. He had a blog called New Zeal, and everybody read it. And as you probably know, Glenn Beck read it. Of course, Glenn Beck read my Cloward Piven strategy stuff too, and he used that for his programs. But Trevor gave him just scads of material for an ongoing program that he had. Trevor is a real resource, and There's literally nobody else in this country like him, literally. And he has devoted his entire time tirelessly to bringing the truth out and to educating the American people, because this is a dire threat, and we are at the very end of our rope today. We are on the cusp. We decide at this moment if we're going to move forward as a nation of laws, where we can preserve and grow the American dream, or are we going to go over the cliff and become another socialist country? And it won't be a socialist country like West Germany. It will be a socialist country like Cuba or North Korea, because those people who are intent on taking this over, they really do hate. They really, really do. And they have no qualms about it. So without saying anything more, I'm going to let my buddy Trevor in. Great to be with you, Trev.
See you, brother. Thanks very much, Jim, and thanks, Regina, and thanks, Don, and Peg, and the Steves, and Jeff, and all the others, and Aaron, and everybody else I know here, and Solomon. Look, thanks for coming tonight. I want to start with a little story. I was in any refugees from California here tonight? No? I was surprised. Well, I was in Los Angeles, and I walk up to a street vendor to buy some food. He gave me the food, gave him the money, and he said, "You've got an accent. Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from New Zealand." He said, "Well, where's that?" So to make it really, really easy for him, I said, "Look, it's down near Australia." He said, "Where Arnold Schwarzenegger comes from." Does that explain the voting patterns in California, people? But look, all the time folks ask me, I've spoken maybe 400, 500 groups around your beautiful country, and all the time people say, "Well, why would I care about America? Now, why as a New Zealander would I come here?" I say there's two simple reasons. The first is gratitude. My country was facing invasion during World War II by the Japanese. And if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of your fathers and uncles and grandfathers at the battles of Guadalcanal and the Coral Sea and Midway, we would have been done, folks. And that's a very strong memory even today. The second reason is related, but it's a little more selfish. Ronald Reagan had it right. This is the last best hope for mankind. If you ever lose your constitution, your liberty, your economic dynamism, and your military superiority, all of which took a huge trashing through the Obama years, it wouldn't have been long before you lived in a world run out of Moscow and Beijing and Havana and Tehran. And is that the kind of world you'd like to leave to your children, people? So anybody who cares about liberty has to care about the United States. This is the front line for freedom now. Now I want to say a couple of things about the 2016 election. First, does anybody think there may have been a touch of the miraculous on that election? I think even an atheist would have to acknowledge that one, right? Okay. Because it was all over bar the show. We all knew Hillary Clinton was supposed to win, but it didn't happen that way. But see, I don't see that election as saving America as much as giving America a reprieve, a stay of execution. And if you look at the Old Testament, there's a lot of times when the Israelites got a reprieve. They got a second chance. But how many times did they get a third chance? They got a warning and they either heeded it or they did not. And there were consequences. Well, we're on our second chance, folks, and we cannot come back asking for another one. We've got to make use of this. A little more cynical level, the Germans have a wonderful phrase, Schadenfreude. It means to take pleasure in the pain of others. It's not noble, right? It's not something you boast about. But we've all got a dark side, and I just want you to be honest with me. On election night 2016, when they panned, yeah, I know, and you stayed up till 2 o'clock in the morning and they panned the Democratic Party headquarters in New York, right? And when you saw those little snowflakes bawling their eyes out and hugging each other, did you feel a little bit of Schadenfreude? Okay? Maybe a lot. Okay? So imagine what it's going to feel like in 2020, people. Imagine it, right? Now, what I deal with is national security, because if you cannot, well, security is so important. If you cannot defend your home or your country, you have nothing, nothing at all. And the Old Testament, they talk about welcoming refugees, and the Old Testament is full of borders. The Old Testament is all about national security. If the Israelites couldn't keep their nation, what happened to them? There's a lot of lessons for us in the Old Testament for today. A lot. So I deal with mainly the factor that it's not often discussed. I'm sure there's ex-servicemen or even currently serving service members here tonight who have taken that famous oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic, right? Now, which is more dangerous? An enemy over there with a gun pointed at you, or an enemy wearing a suit and tie like Joe Negussi, basically trashing your Constitution every chance he gets? Domestic by a country mile. And how much focus is put on the domestic enemies? Where is all those government investigative bodies that used to deal with those domestic enemies? They're all gone, people. Which is why we are where we are today. Now, has anybody in the room ever had to undergo an FBI background check for a military position or even a private sector job? Okay, Jim even passed, you know that? Okay, so several. I know Aaron went through one. Okay, so is it true that they are very, very rigorous? They check out your family background, overseas travel, criminal convictions, even bounce checks. Because they need to know that you're going to be a loyal supporter of the Constitution and keep this country safe. Because they know there are a lot of foreign enemies around the world who will use your weak and dishonest to betray you. And one traitor can cost you a battle. One traitor can cost you a war or even your country. You imagine had Benedict Arnold been successful back in the revolutionary times, how different history would have been. Just one of those little things that went wrong for the traitors that saved this nation. So, but what if you're a young Marxist radical who hangs around with the local communist or socialist or the local Muslim Brotherhood, and they control the local Democratic Party, which they do all over the country? And they put a suit and tie on you or a nice pantsuit. And they get you elected to Congress, where you may serve on the Homeland Security Committee or the Armed Services Committee or even the Intelligence Committee. How much of an FBI background check do you need for that one, folks? Zero. Because the people are supposed to vet the candidates, right? And the media is supposed to help you do it, right? Well, how's that been working out? So, the media is supposed to help you, they don't. So, but there's no way that, well, put it this way, do you think the Iranians know about this? There's no background checks in Congress? Do you think the Cubans might know? Or the Chinese might know about this? So what do you think the Chinese would do? Would they don't like President Trump, right? So what would they do? Would they risk a multi-billion-dollar trade war or $1 trillion shooting war, which they may lose? Or would they spend a few $1 million activating their local communists to co-opt your congressman? What do you think they would do? People like Adam Schiff, who's been working with the Chinese for years. What would you do if you were in China? No security checks, no media scrutiny, you're home and host. But there's one thing that will stop them. One thing that's going to save us. It's the FBI, right? Okay? Because the FBI's job is to root out spies and traitors and terrorists. And you saw how absolutely ruthless they were with Hillary Clinton, right? They didn't give her one bit of mercy. They put national security above their jobs and pensions, right? No, they didn't. And you think they would? You think these people are going to go after their bosses? So really, there is no security in Congress. None. Because the FBI doesn't dare go after them. There's no media scrutiny. And there's no background checks. What could possibly go wrong? What is now? So, but, and if you look at the FBI, that is overseen by the Judiciary Committee, the most powerful committee in your Congress, that also oversees the Justice Department. And what's supposed to happen is the FBI is supposed to catch the bad guys, and the Justice Department is supposed to prosecute them. Well, how's that been working out? Sort of been a bit inverted, has it not? So, now, the Judiciary Committee for over 40 years was run by a man called John Conyers from Michigan. He was in Congress, I think, 160 years in total. And I regard him as one of the most treasonous congressmen you ever had. Now, John Conyers abolished the House Un-American Activities Committee, one of your last lines of defense, abolished it in a subterfuge, which is outlined in our movie here. He also defended the Muslim Brotherhood. When some of your Republican congressmen tried to get the Muslim Brotherhood designated as a terrorist organization, you can watch John Conyers in my movie saying, oh no, they're okay now. They've given up violence. They're a peaceful social service agency now, and we should work with them. These are the fathers of Hamas and Al-Qaeda and ISIS people. And John Conyers wants us to work with them. Now, John Conyers had a 50-year history with the Communist Party USA, 40 years with Democratic Socialists of America, which is worse than the Communist Party USA, and 30 years with the Workers' World Party, which supports North Korea and Cuba and Iran. John Conyers was a hardcore anti-American Marxist-Leninist. As hardcore as you can get, people, yet for 40 years he basically lorded it over the FBI. Yeah. Now, also on that committee until recently was a man called Luis Gutierrez from Illinois, who was a former leader of the pro-Cuban Marxist-Leninist Puerto Rican Socialist Party and a big Muslim Brotherhood supporter. On that committee right now, you have Judy Chu from California, San Gabriel Valley, a former supporter of the Communist Workers' Party, a militant pro-Chinese group, goes to China all the time, where she is described in the Chinese press as China's best friend in your Congress. And you should see Judy Chu attack the FBI in the Judiciary Committee whenever they have the temerity to arrest one of the more than 25,000 Chinese spies currently working in this country. You are racist, she says. You are a racist organization. You're only persecuting these people because you hate Asians. And she has arranged for sensitivity training for these cruel FBI agents so they don't persecute these poor Chinese spies any longer. Now, Sean Hannity's been a bit upset lately because you've got a socialist in Congress, Ocasio-Cortez. She's crazy. She's a member of Democratic Socialists of America. She is a full-on Marxist. And Sean acts like this is something new. This is something shocking. Well, the head of the Judiciary Committee right now is a man called Jerry Nadler. On the Trump impeachment team, people. Jerry Nadler has been a member of Democratic Socialists of America since at least 1977. He is a full-on Marxist. Yet he's leading the impeachment of your president with pro-Chinese Adam Schiff, who also takes money from Iran. People, so the FBI thinks, Well, we need to start investigating Congress members because some of them are working for Iran, some of them are working for Cuba, some of them are working for China. They're all working for the Muslim Brotherhood. We need to investigate these people. Let's go to Congress and ask for some money. Mr. Nadler and Mrs. Chu, can we please have some money to investigate your colleagues? And by the way, you guys are both on the list. Is that all right? How do you think that's going to go? So you see the problem. I'll give you one more example. He's also in the movie. Andre Carson from Indiana, one of your 3 Muslim members of Congress, heavily involved with communist and Marxist groups, very actively involved with several Muslim Brotherhood front groups. Now, I've got him on tape. You can watch it. He's at a Muslim Brotherhood front group convention in Connecticut in 2012. And he gets up in front of all the assembled Muslims and says, "Hey, guys, I've been told there's some spies here today. Some people in the audience are undercover, spying on us, because they believe we are here plotting to destroy this country. Can you believe that? Well, I say to you people undercover, Allah will not allow you to stop us." This man serves on the Intelligence Committee, people. He oversees the CIA, the FBI, DEA, NSA, the whole lot. There are 100 members of your House right now, including Joe Negussi, including Diana DeGette and Jason Crow, who are so involved in neo-communism, Muslim Brotherhood front groups, or taking money from foreign powers. They couldn't pass a background check to drive a school bus in this county. But they are running the Homeland Security Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Homeland Security Committee. Can you see why President Trump has a little trouble with the Democrats? That's 25% of each of your bodies, your legislative bodies, are working for the other team, including the chairmanships of almost every single committee in your Congress. Every one. From Homeland Security, the whole lot. So, and recently Donald Trump Jr. made a statement, and I got a new book coming out on March. And go online, trevorloudon.com, pre-order it. It's going to be called White House Reds: Communist, Socialist, and Security Risks Running for US President in 2020. How many people do you think I profile in that book, folks, that are currently running? How many do you reckon? Only 10. I don't have Bloomberg in there because he's just an idiot. And Andrew Yang, who's just off the planet, right? But anyway, all the rest are Marxists, all of them. Joe Biden, the moderate, right? He's the blue-collar moderate, the one the old-fashioned Democrats look to. Joe Biden has been working in the interests of Moscow since 1972. He was elected to the Senate in Delaware against a 4-term incumbent with 80% approval rating as a 29-year-old city councillor, because he was backed by a group called the Council for a Livable World, which was set up by a Soviet spy called Leo Szilard, with the objective of funding left-wing senators who would then work to gut your military, to wipe your nuclear arsenal out, to cut weapon systems, which Joe Biden has done in spades. And they got behind him, and the man who arranged for the money was a man called Albert Gore Sr. You may have heard of his son. He invented the internet and global warming. Okay? Albert Gore Sr. was the protege of a man called Armand Hammer, one of the leading Soviet spies of the 20th century. Joe Biden owes his career to 2 Soviet agents and has worked to the advantage of Moscow every single day of his career since. He has done more damage to your military than virtually any standing army could hope to achieve. And he's the moderate. Well, you go down, Bernie Sanders, you hardly have to mention, only say Bernie Sanders is not, you know the difference between democratic socialism and communism? It's about 5 years. Bernie Sanders is a full-on, hardcore communist. His people are now being trained by a group called the Rosa Luxemburg Stiftung, based out of Manhattan, New York. They are training his people. That is run by a German political party, funded by the German taxpayer. This is totally illegal, folks. Funded by the German taxpayer and run by a German political party called Die Linke, the left. Used to be called the East German Communist Party. They are running Bernie Sanders. He's got communist connections like you wouldn't believe all over. He's got Democratic Socialists of America chapters in Fort Collins. They've got them in Boulder. They've got them in Denver and Colorado Springs and La Plata County. And they are running his operation in this state as they run his operations in every other state. Complete communist. Then you go one step down the totem pole, Elizabeth Warren. There's an Indian joke there, folks. Just think about that. Okay? Now, Elizabeth Warren has worked with Democratic Socialists of America. They set up her famous Consumer Protection Agency. That was completely their project. She just fronted it for them. That was a Marxist project that is now one of the most oppressive government agencies operating in the federal government. She also works with the pro-Chinese group Liberation Road. Then you go down to Little Pete, sensible Little Pete Buttigieg, right? You know, some Republicans like Pete because he's sort of a little bit moderate in some things, right? Well, Pete's father was Joseph Buttigieg, the leading Gramsciist scholar in the world, the head of the World Gramsci Society. Now, Gramsci was the Italian Communist Party theoretician who basically invented political correctness. Basically, he is the leading communist theoretician. All Democratic Socialists of America follow his philosophies. Because what he said is, the workers will not rise up against the capitalists like Marx predicted, because the workers love their religion too much, and they love the status quo, and they buy and they're patriotic. So what we have to do is infiltrate the church, infiltrate the universities and the media and Hollywood to turn the minds of the people towards socialism. That is the Bernie bros, people. That's most of your teenagers and young people today. They're all the victims of Gramsci. And Pete Buttigieg's father was the leading Gramsci scholar in the world. What do you think they talked about over the breakfast table, people? Pete Buttigieg has been working with Democratic Socialists of America his entire career. He got on their mailing list as a teenager. He won an essay competition nationwide on his great socialist hero Bernie Sanders. He was at one of their strikes in Cape Cod a few weeks ago. He is another Marxist. Amy Klobuchar is a complete Marxist. She comes out of the Paul Wellstone movement. All of them are Marxists, folks. Doesn't matter which one wins. We can't let any of them win. Not one of them. So this is where we are, you know. As Jim said, the demographics is a big problem because MIT said recently there are 22 million illegals in the country. Well, Jim says it's 30. Other people say it's 40. But let's just go with MIT. Now, as Jim suggested, Hillary Clinton promised to legalise every single one of those illegals within 100 days of taking office. Now, had she done that, what proportion of them do you think would have voted Democrat? 95%. Let's go for 80%, be very conservative. That would give the Democrats 15 or 16 million new voters overnight. Now, Mitt Romney lost his election by 2.5 million votes. Donald Trump won by about 300,000 votes, thanks to the wisdom of your founding fathers and the Electoral College, but actually lost the popular vote by about 3 million. So what do you think's going to happen if the next Democrat president legalises 22 or 30 million illegals? You will lose North Carolina, Florida, Texas, Arizona and Georgia straight away. You tell me how you ever win another election from that point. You won't. It's over. We are one bad election away from losing the country unless we can turn things around. And President Trump has been doing that. Now, you've got to say this. One of the big, see, if you're a Democrat, you win. This is how you win. It's the old Jesse Jackson Rainbow Coalition strategy of the 1980s. You get all the minorities together, plus the progressive whites, and you add them all up till you get 51%. So they own 90% of the black population, so they think. They own 70% of the Latino population, so they think. They own a lot of the Asian Americans, most of the Native Americans. They own a lot of the soccer moms, the millennials, and the progressive whites, and this is their new American majority. They've already actually got a majority now. Just as Jim said, they don't all vote, thankfully. So now, thanks to President Trump, he went into the black communities and said, guys, why are your inner cities such a mess? Why are they full of drugs and poverty and crime and dependency? You've been voting Democrat for 50 years and this is what you got. Well, why don't you vote for me? What do you got to lose? And a whole bunch of them said, heck yeah, and they did. President Trump won Michigan by 10,000 votes, folks. And that was because instead of 96% of the black population voting Democrat, only 92% did. He has 25 to 30% popularity now among black males. You haven't seen that since Abraham Lincoln. And that is freaking the Democrats out, folks. You know, Latino support for Trump is up to 60% in Texas now. It's high. You know, the white union guys out in Pennsylvania and Ohio that always voted Democrat because Daddy voted Democrat and Granddaddy voted Democrat. Well, he went out there and said to them, you know, where are your factories? Where are your high-paying union jobs? Where are your steel mills? You cannot defend your country without an industrial base. We are going to bring the jobs back. Are you with me? And for the first time in their lives, tens and hundreds of thousands of those white union guys went down to the polling booth and ticked the box for a Republican. Do you think that's freaking the Democrats out, folks? Oh, yeah. They understand this is their last shot. This is their last shot before their rainbow coalition starts to crumble. Because you imagine President Trump gets elected again. The taxes keep coming down. The border wall gets built. We're energy independent now. Right? Black unemployment goes down to virtually zero. Black kids are getting apprenticeships. They're going to college. Latino kids are getting apprenticeships. They're going to college. They're building businesses. You know, there's no more illegal labor. There's a huge investment into your economy. Things are going up and up and up, and the American worker has no competition. What do you think is going to happen to wages and salaries, folks? They're going to go up like you have never, ever seen before. 4 years of that, people. What do you think the Democrats are going to have to offer anybody? They understand if they don't win this election, they are going to fracture and be destroyed as a political party. They understand they either have to destroy President Trump or he destroys them. That's the choice. So which side do you want to be on that struggle, folks? So look, I'm painting a very negative picture here because if we blow this God-given opportunity, we have only ourselves to blame for disaster. But if we dig in, we can have a more amazing future than any of us could ever contemplate. We could have, this is really a crossroads, people. The next election is going to either put this country on a path right down into the toilet or on a path to virtuous spirals upward that we cannot even guess where it will go. That's what we're facing. And it might come down to one congressional seat in Colorado. It might come down to one Senate seat. We might elect President Trump and we lose the Senate. Well, what's the good of that? You know, so I'm not a big fan of Cory Gardner, people. I can tell you that straight. But this is not about Cory Gardner, this election. This is a referendum on the Trump agenda and American liberty. This is what we're voting for. You might not like your local Republican rep. He may not be as conservative as you like, but your president is. And your president needs the House and he needs the Senate. And I don't care what I got to vote for, people. I want him back in. Absolutely, I want him back in. And I'll support Corey Gardner if that's what it takes. So, this is where we're at, folks. We sit on our hands, we're in trouble. But, imagine, President Trump gets re-elected. The taxes keep coming down, the regulations keep coming off. Your constitutional liberties start getting restored. Your workers are doing real well. The border is sealed. He stops the 60,000 deaths from fentanyl from China every year that are devastating your communities. All of these things could be in train. Have you ever seen a president, fulfill as many of his promises as this one? And that's with absolute opposition in the House, a whole bunch of Republicans who don't support him, having to put up with Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins in the Senate to get anything done. All of it, plus the Democrats, plus Hollywood, plus the news media. Look, that's their team. Our team is the grassroots and President Trump and a few good Republicans. That's our team. Well, if we can win the next election and get the House back and get 2 or 3 more good conservative senators, he will be unleashed, people. Don't you think he wants to stick it to the left a little bit? Don't you think he wants to help you by getting revenge on them? You imagine what he's seething. So we've got to give him that opportunity because that's going to help us. But one thing I think is going to have more impact in the long term than any other, well, one thing I want to do is next election we've got to have to start a campaign to end the Department of Education, right? So you can educate your children in Colorado values, not Washington, D.C. values. Because we're going to lose our kids if we keep this up. We already are. Bring it back to the States, folks. But one thing I think is super important here, now President Trump, how many times has some little twerp in the Ninth Circuit stopped something President Trump's tried to do? Because he interprets the law his way, right? Well, President Trump has put more conservative and constitutionalist judges into our court system than any other president in eons. Even the Ninth Circuit is now conservative. But think about the Supreme Court and the consequences of that. Now, thanks to the president, we now have for 60 years, the left have controlled the Supreme Court. They make a bad decision, they call that precedent and pile another decision on top of that, and you're not supposed to touch them, right? Well, now those precedents are being turned back because we now have a 5-4 majority in the Supreme Court, right? Now, we know Roberts is a flake, don't worry. But at least he votes our way more than he doesn't. So already a lot of progress has been made, the Janus decision and many other decisions. Now there's a whole bunch of things coming up, including Roe v. Wade, gun rights, religious liberty decisions. A whole bunch of things are building. Now President Trump gets re-elected. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is getting pretty old, people. Okay? Her health is not the best. Now I don't wish her ill, but she has said, she would publicly said she'd love to go and retire in New Zealand. Okay? Okay? Well, I'm willing to take one for the team, folks. Okay? I'll do it. I'll suck it up. She can come to New Zealand and play bingo all day long, and you will have a 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, folks. That alone should be enough incentive. That alone. Imagine what that can do for Roe v. Wade, to overturn that. Your religious liberties, your Second Amendment liberties, your business regulation, your education system, all of the things the left have been piling on you for 60 years, we can start to overturn it. Am I getting a bit overexcited here? Am I getting too crazy here? You've seen what the president could do with what he's got. Imagine what he can do with the House, the Senate, and a friendly Supreme Court that actually respects the Constitution. How different this country could be in 4 years' time, folks. Yes. All the things we've been fighting for, they're finally there in our grasp. So this is what I say to you, folks. This is the battle of our time. The next election is the battle. This is our Battle of Britain. This is our Gettysburg. This is our Pearl Harbor. This is all of it rolled into one. This is the must-win battle of our time. Absolutely. So this is what I say to you, folks. We got a choice. We can take this God-given opportunity and throw it away, or we can double down. Now, I know the sacrifices you people make. You're always out there putting up yard signs and writing out checks and driving for miles and going to meetings. All things you could be doing. You could be doing lots of other stuff. You'd be spending more time with your grandchildren. You could be doing your hobbies, learning. You could be doing all this other stuff. But you do it year after year because you love your country and you love your children. It's why you do it, is it not? It's why you do it. So I'm asking you for the next year, for the next few months, to double down and make more sacrifices than you've ever made before. Ever. Because this next 10 months is going to impact your children's future more than any other time in your lives, folks. You think I'm wrong here? No. The stakes are so high. Now, if you give it everything that you have for your God and your country and your constitution and your family, you give it everything that you have, two things may happen. Conceivably, we may give it everything we've got and still lose. That is a possibility. But at least you'll all earn the right to look your children in the eye and say, I did everything I possibly could for you. And what is that worth to you, folks? And if you win, and you absolutely can win this, people, because that 2016 election, that convinced me that God is not finished with this country yet, folks. It's not finished. He's not finished at all. When you win this, you will spark an economic boom like you've never seen. And that will enable you to build more churches and more hospitals and send more missionaries overseas. You will spark an economic boom like you've never seen. You will spark a liberty boom not just in this country, but you will inspire the people of Iran, the people of Brazil, the people of South Africa and France and Germany and Australia and New Zealand to strike out for their liberty. People, they're all watching you now, folks. If it goes out here, it goes out everywhere. But if we win it here, you're going to put the dictators on the back foot all across the world, folks. From China to Iran to Russia, you name it, they're going to be in trouble. They're already in trouble. You've seen what's happening in Iran, just with Trump making a stand on them. So you can spark an economic boom and a liberty boom. You can set this country ablaze, folks. You can change everything. I'm not trying to put a big responsibility trip on you people, but the fate of the Western world depends on you. Okay? Because it does. Just like it did on those 3% of your ancestors who fought in the first revolution. 20% supported it. The rest didn't care. Is that familiar to you, any of you guys? But they won, people. They beat the world's greatest army. They were losing every battle. They were chased across every state. They were starving and eating berries in the snow to survive, dodging British bullets. They were almost done. And George Washington got down on his knees and he prayed at Valley Forge, folks. And he got up and he went on to take the British out at Yorktown and turn the course of the war. And not just the war, of world history. Don't tell me the age of miracles is over, folks. It ain't. But we got to do our part just like your ancestors did. So this is what motivates me, folks. I see a great future. I see an economic boom and a liberty boom. But the thing that motivates me more than anything else, I want to be able to look my kids in the eye and say, I did everything I could for you, and I want to be able to earn the right to pass on to my children, just as you want to pass on to your children and grandchildren, not just the amazing country that you inherited, but one even greater. Is that worth fighting for, folks? So I want to say to you folks, thank you so much for what you do for America and for liberty and for my country and for Australia. God bless America and God bless Colorado and God bless you all. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Coming up to you.
Would you, is this on, Jeff?
That's on.
Jeff, is this on?
No.
All right. Good deal. Thank you, Jeff. How many are glad to be here tonight with these gentlemen?
Thank you.
We are going to do something tonight. They came and said we are just open to whatever would be received. I'm going to be passing the plate, and I want you to give largely to them. How many would be willing to sacrifice and give to these gentlemen tonight? They're well recognized, nationally known. So start with hundreds, work your way down to 50s. How's that? And we're going to pass this through the congregation. I'm going to have the ushers thank you. Tim's already got it. Thank you, Scott. And as they are doing that, we are going to field some questions. And so let's field let's take about 15 minutes of questions before we wrap up for both Trevor and Jim. Thank you again, gentlemen. So Hans?
I liked what I heard this evening, but I want to make some remark. Like I'm German, I'm born in Germany, and I came here to this country, and I thank God that I could come here. And I didn't emigrate here, I was asked to come here. And when I was in Germany, I was talking to my parents. I said, I don't understand why you haven't done anything against Hitler. Everybody had Mein Kampf, and they could read what he will do. The answer was most people didn't read it, and the people who read it didn't believe what he was saying. Mm-hmm. So I'm a scientist, so I read 3 versions of the Quran. And I informed myself about the hadiths and the Sharia, because I think when you want to talk about something, you should know what you are talking about. And I can tell you, my hair was standing up, and I had to force myself to read it. And especially as a German, when I read that the Quran demands that you should kill every Jew you see, even when he hides behind a rock, I cannot believe that people here don't read the Quran and don't talk about it and don't even know what they talk about it. They don't see the danger, and I, as a German, I must say I would risk my life that something like that never occurs again, because the Quran preached anti-Semitism in a way which is unbelievable. I see it in Germany. They walk around with their flags with anti-Semitic propaganda everywhere where it is, and nobody is doing anything about it.
I'd like to address that, and I'm sure Jim will too. Now, just look, in 1930s Germany, there was only one force that could have stopped Hitler. There was one force that had the moral authority and the numbers, and that was the German churches. And the German churches, by and large, just stayed in their churches. They became Nazi Christians. They put swastikas in their churches, and they turned their back on the world. That was the German churches. And because of that moral cowardice...
The Roman Catholic Church.
Well, it was all of them. It wasn't just the Catholic Church.
The Roman Catholic has a concordat with Hitler.
Yeah, I know they did too. But even the Protestant churches, there was with very few exceptions. But the point I'm making is this. They could have stopped him, but they didn't. And because of that, 6 million Jews were slaughtered, 20 million people died, and hundreds of thousands of young American boys lost their lives sorting out the mess. Well, we are here now, folks. We are facing our own Holocaust. And it's going to come down to whether the churches stand up or they don't. Because the churches are the ones who can stop this. They have the numbers and the moral authority to do it. Unfortunately, too many of them have cowardly pastors, like not with noble exceptions here, that will not make a moral stand. I'm actually doing a movie on the enemies within the church and what's happening in the churches now. So I agree with you, sir. We are facing the same kind of thing that happened with Hitler, and we have the same problems with huge moral cowardice that's allowing this to continue.
And I want to say one more thing. I'm very thankful for you that you said that we should support Cory Gardner, because that's exactly what I wrote weeks ago in my announcement that I will run for Senate seat in District 14.
Okay.
I'm really glad that you said that, because we should aware how important that is.
Yeah.
That we put away any animosity. I can understand that you say you have not the best ideas about Cory Gardner, but that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Because when
that's minor.
Yeah. But when I think they can boil it down what we are voting against, because this election is nothing than anything else.
Yeah.
What we're voting about is the question: in what America do you want to live?
Yes.
What are you willing to do for it?
Absolutely, sir.
A quick public service announcement, folks, and thanks. Make the checks out to Destiny Christian Center, and we'll compile them all and send them, put them into one check for the guys. So if that's what you're doing. Okay.
Just a point of information, when George Washington was crossing the Delaware in the boat, those boats were known as Durhams, D-U-R-H-A-M. They were made in the Durham Metal Mill in Philadelphia.
Okay.
My name is Kirk, and I wanted to ask a question, because this is something that's not clear in my mind. So far, I really like Trump, and the fact that he's done a lot of what he said he's going to do. He still seems to support the banks that are illegal, and he's made his, and his dad was kind of crooked. He did a lot of crooked deals with the government, with the building of the barracks and things like that, and overcharging. So he got his start from crooked money, right? So
I don't know that's true, but okay, but
is that incorrect?
Well.
Okay. Well, he was indicted a couple times. Well, anyhow. But let me ask you this, okay? I think what would do the most damage to the country is if everybody loses their 401k, they lose their money, they lose their way to pay for their homes, and we seem to be on course for that because the market is they're dumping through the Fed windows, they're dumping billions of dollars in there. Is it possible in your mind that Trump could be controlled opposition?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to.
Well, we'll say this. Look, I will say this. You're talking one person here.
I know.
You're talking an entire massive bureaucracy with many people. The vast majority of them are deep state actors who are continuing to spin out of control like they were before, and he only gets to it a little bit at a time. I wrote an article about H.R. McMaster, and he was a really bad dude. And when Trump first came to the White House, he wanted to do what he always wants to do, which is make up, try to make friends with the people who are there, try to make friends with the Senate and the House. And so he went to the Senate and the House and said, who would you guys like me to have in here? Let's work together. And so they got the head of the Office of Presidential Personnel, they got John Boehner's chief of staff, who was about the biggest rhino on the face of the earth. And that guy kept people like me, Phil Haney, hundreds of others from getting anywhere near any job, and instead put all the people like H.R. McMaster in place. And it took a while for Trump to figure out, because he doesn't like to think the worst of people. He didn't like to. H.R. McMaster is a friendly, outgoing type of guy. He didn't like to think badly of him. But he finally figured it out. This guy's leaking stuff, he's a backstabber, and he finally threw him out. And that's the kind of the way these things have been going. He gets the credit whether he had anything to do with it or not.
Well, some of the people pointing into very, very high positions, like some of the things like
Some of them are bad. Yeah.
Like what Ivanka and Jared's doing, they're
I'm not a fan of that.
They're family.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I pray that he's a good guy, but he's in a position right now.
Well, all right, let's do this.
Well, no.
Let's do this.
Can I just...
let me just finish. Let's do this. Let's stop looking for perfection, because we're never going to find it.
Right.
He's the best we've had.